But anyway, the topic given to me was finishing well. And I included another, how do you call this one, subtitle to it. Confronted by the past, consoled by the present, challenged by the future. So we begin our reflection with reading from we start this with the scriptural passage taken from the letter to the Hebrews. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the sake of the joy that was set before him endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God. In the book, All I Really Need to Know, I Learned in Kindergarten, Robert Fulghum states his own philosophical principle, or what he calls personal credo, as follows. All I really need to know about how to live and what to do and how to be, I learned in kindergarten. Wisdom was not at the top of the graduate school mountain, but there in the sunlight of at Sunday school. Learning such as share everything, play fair, don't keep people, put things back where you found them, clean up your own mess, or wash your hands. He calls these learnings as deep kindergarten. In explaining the significance of washing hands, for example, he wrote, the history of society is more defined by its understanding of disease than its formulation of philosophy and political theory. Through basic sanitation, keeping excrement off our hands as well as out of our minds is important. When we were attending primary schools ourselves, when tayo nasa elementary, we also learned one important kindergarten lesson. Pero we seemingly have forgotten this rule set by our teacher. A rule which I believe is still valid until now in so many ways. Siguro natatandaan niyo pa pag sinabi ng teacher natin, finish or not finish, pass your paper. This simple instruction kept on popping up in my consciousness while attempting to reflect on the words of Paul. What do you mean when we say we should be confronted by the past? The author of the letter to the Hebrews brings back the reader or listener in the case of the early Christian community to the noisy amphitheaters of the ancient world. You can imagine the energy bursting in the arena, coming from hustling and bustling of the crowds. There was this joy, excitement, anticipation. Sweats were running down from their foreheads. Their chiseled bodies were a revelation of months or even years of training and hard work. Their eyes were intently fixed on the goal. Their muscles were flexing and bulging, ready to spring into action at any moment. We know that in the old world, deprived of modern communications such as television or radios or internet, games such as marathons were not really a platform of public enjoyment. They used to serve also a strong fount of motivation to earn people's admiration and praise. Hence, there was this pressing need to master the body and to transform it into a competitive machine. Aware of the popularity of such public exhibitions such as the Greek Olympics, the letter to the Hebrews was reminding the Christians that the faith they embrace would demand from them the commitment to run the marathon of Christ. And this means, according to the writer, to lay aside every weight and sin that links so closely. The word used was onkos. Onkos means mass, weight, heaviness, or even bodily fat, taba. And in line with this sports imagery, the word could refer to a runner stripping of burdensome clothing or losing excess bodily fat. Sabi nila sa old times, naalala ko nung nasa Greece ako, kinikwento ng isang tour guide doon, that when the ancient Greek players were into marathon or into any sports activity such as wrestling, naguhubad talaga sila. Talagang hubot-hubad. Para sa kanila, yung damit ay a form of hindrance. Hindi lang yung fats, but even clothing itself. In order to succeed, one had to get rid of anything that would hinder breathing or the free movements of the limbs. So the Christ follower or a Christian must lay aside everything that hinders if the faith race is to be run triumphantly. Or specifically, we are to get rid of that entangling sin. Sin impedes movement. The movement of our soul, the movement of God's grace, the movement of the Holy Spirit. In Greek, we call sin as hamartia, which literally means to miss the mark, to miss the point, the goal, or the target. Sin, therefore, from this understanding, means to miss the mark of the goals set by God. Sin is to be misdirected due to one's own foolishness or failure to listen. When one is in sin, one is not really being truly human, not really living, not truly free. I remember Saint Irenaeus telling us, who is a human person? Human person is someone who is fully alive in God. Remember the story of the prodigal son. At the end, he was dying because of hunger, for abandoning the Father, for missing the mark. Thus, one needs to be converted, to be turned around, reoriented, revitalized, and healed. But all this can only take place if we are humble enough to admit our mistakes and be confronted by the values of the gospel. The seasons of Lent and Advent, for example, are an opportune time to reflect on our inattentiveness to God's whisperings, yung mga bulong sa atin ng Diyos. It's about being confronted by God's goodness, yung kanyang kagandahang loob, vis-a-vis our negligence, yung ating mga kawalang utang ng loob. So, merong parabang ugnayan ng dalawang loob, loob ng Diyos, tsaka loob natin. It is during these times of Advent that we learn and we go back to the meaning of discernment and reflection. The church encourages us to fast. Why? Not simply to avoid things in excess of us, but rather we are encouraged to fast in order to go back to the basics of life. John Piper, in his book Hunger for God, wrote the following words: "The greatest adversary of love to God is not his enemies, but his gifts. And the deadliest appetites are not for the poison of evil, but for the simple pleasures of earth. For when these replace an appetite for God Himself, the idolatry is scarcely recognizable and almost incurable. Ang kalaban daw ng Diyos sa ating kalooban ay hindi yung mga bagay na pangit. Ang kalaban daw ay yung mga magaganda. Sapagkat sa magaganda, nalilimutan natin yung source ng kagandahan. Confronted by this sense of shame brought by sinfulness, the image and likeness of God awakens in us the desire to embrace change in order to redeem our fallen state. But we know that the journey towards change is not easy. Hindi mo talaga madaling magbago. In fact, countless suggestions have been forwarded throughout history to effect transformation. For instance, various political thinkers argue that real change will happen if economic equality in our society takes place. Kapag daw nagbago na ang gobyerno, magiging mabuti na ang lahat. Others say, and they speak of acquisition of knowledge through good education as the authentic way to achieve change. Kapag daw graduate ka, nag-aral ka sa pinakamagaling na paaralan, nagpakadalubhasa ka sa pinakamagandang universidad, nagkaroon ka ng magandang edukasyon, sabi niya, magbabago ka. Still, others attempt to push by change by saying that given the rise of technological advancements, troubles, and turmoil of all sorts would be eradicated. Kapag daw gumagamit ka ng mga makabagong makinarya, bagong kagamitan tulad ng cellphone, ng internet, mapapagang ang buhay, at marami raw na pagbabagong mangyayari, pagbabagong maganda. All one needs to do is to be open to these new things. I'm not saying that these perspectives will not affect change. Yes, they will bring change. But the question is, will they be lasting change? For example, how we become a better society now that we have these advanced gadgets in our hands? Did all these pursuits towards self-redemption truly succeed? While all these questions were running in my head, a certain poem that I read several years ago came into my mind. So let me just share to you a few verses. It is entitled The Paradox of Our Time. It says, the paradox of our time in history is that we have taller buildings, but shorter tempers. We have wider freeways, but narrower footpaths. We spend more, but we have less. We buy more, but enjoy less. We have bigger houses and smaller families, more conveniences, but less time. We have more degrees, but less sense, more knowledge, but less judgment. More experts, yet more problems. More medicine, but less wellness. We have multiplied our possessions, but reduced our values. We talk too much, we love too seldom, and we hate too often. We've learned how to make a living, but not a life. We've added years to life, but not life to years. We've been all the way to the moon and back, have trouble crossing the street to meet a new neighbor. We conquered outer space, but not our inner space. We've conquered the atom, but not our prejudice. We write more, but learn less. We plan more, but accomplish less. We've learned to rush, but not to wait. These are the times of fast foods and slow digestion. Big men with small character. Steep profits and shallow relationships. These are the days of two incomes, but more divorce. Panzer houses, but broken homes. I think all this should confront us. All things should question us. If the past is the site of confrontation, the present offers us consolation that hopefully paves way to transformation. Next slide, please. Let us go back to the opening words of the second chapter of the letter to the Hebrews. It says, we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. A great cloud of witnesses. Ancient writers of classical literature would employ or would use the word cloud to describe a large number of people. But the author of the letter to the Hebrews highlighted this image by saying that it's not simply a gathering of clouds of witnesses. Pwede naman niya sana ilagay ito eh. Pero nilagay niya, great clouds of witnesses. And they were not simply witnesses. They were watching us. And until now, they're still watching us as we run Christ's marathon. Who are these witnesses? Are they mere spectators? These witnesses are no other than the multitude of Christians who never gave up their faith in the midst of tribulations, pains, sufferings, trials, and persecutions. They are the martyrs who never surrendered their faith in the face of their impending death. Indeed, they are martyrs. Martyrion in Greek, which literally means a witness. So they prefer to lose their life rather than abandon Jesus. Indeed, they are the ones who truly hook into their hands, into their minds rather, and souls, the meaning of faith as found in the first part of the letter to the Hebrews. What is faith? Faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conditions of things unseen. So kahit sa harap ng kamatayan, kaya nilang hawakan ang kanilang sarili, ang kanilang takot, sapagkat may isang source sila na po. Faith. Next slide, please. I'm now challenging you to imagine that you are in a stadium. Imagine that you are in a stadium right now. You are about to run the race of your life. Imagine tatakbo ka. Your heart is pounding and beating so fast as you position yourself at the racetrack. Your muscles are tingling as they anticipate a immense stream of blood that is about to flow into your veins and arteries. And the galleries where spectators are seated are literally shaking from their shouting and cheering and so on. And then you realize, imagine you realize that you can hear your name. Halimbawa, Randy. Sumisigaw sila, go Randy, kaya mo yan. They know what they are shouting because they ran once that same time. Alam nila kung yung sinisigaw nilang go Randy. Kasi minsan na rin silang tumakbo doon sa stadium na yun. Among us Catholics, they are no other than the company of saints. Itong clouds of witnesses. We know that a saint is not someone with extraordinary powers. Hindi sila Wonder Woman o kaya Superman. But rather, they are ordinary people with extraordinary love. Hence, they know from their own experience what running the marathon of Christ means and what it entails. If there's one saint who may console us in our struggles in our Christian journey, I believe it is no other than Saint Ignatius of Loyola. One of the spiritual exercises he developed is called the way of contra agere. Ano ba yung sabihin ng contra agere? Ang contra, alam na natin. Related yun doon. Contra agere means to go against. So, siguro, balikan natin yung kwento ni Saint Ignatius of Loyola. As Ignatius spent from March 1522 to February 1523 in the cave of Manresa. He allowed his hair and nails to go long. Pinahaba niya yung kanyang buhok at saka yung kanyang mga nails, mga kuko. Bakit? Because he was trying to wrestle with his attachments to many things, such as the clothing. What he did in Manresa was to go against what he wanted. At least for the meantime. Hindi naman sinasabing pangmatagalan, for the meantime. And so if we find ourselves attached to some unhealthy things, what we have to do is to go to the opposite direction. Kaya siya contra-agere. Agere means to go. So to go to the opposite direction. It is bending ourselves back into opposite direction. Kaya nga, siguro, maganda tayo sa sarili natin, what is our hangout? What is our attachment? What is our preoccupation that hinders us to become better runners for Christ? Pera ba? Clothing? Anger? Power? Uncontrollable appetite for food? Appetite for social media? Such that we no longer have time for God or for prayer. So this idea of contra-agere is giving up for the meantime what we enjoy. It is purposely moving out of this particular world that holds us so that we may learn detachment and control. After Ignatius was able to tame his worldly thirst and attachment, he finally cut his long hair and nails because he was finally free. Kaya niya ng panghawakan ng kanyang sarili. Here's my personal experience of contra-agere. When I entered the novitiate, I was nervous knowing that I would be in a great struggle since I was not used to long silence or to minimal possessions. No cell phones, not much money. Nung pumasok ako ng novitiate sa aming seminar sa Angono, galing ako sa corporate world. So, nandun pa rin sa aking attachment sa maraming bagay. Out of angst, I told our novice master that perhaps I could not break all these attachments. Perhaps I would be leaving the seminary after 2 or 3 months. Maliban doon sa attachment, natatakot din ako sa boredom. The boredom of silence, the boredom of reflection. But after 6 months, that boredom became source of inner joy and peace. Apat kami sa novitiate during that time. And we were given, during that time, once a month, pwede kaming lumabas to buy things. But many of us, the 4 of us, would never want to go out of the seminary. Parang gusto namin miss namin yung lugar. Pupunta kami ng bayan, pero after 1 hour, babalik na agad. Pagpapagupit lang, akit ulit. We learn to appreciate simpler things in life. That changed too. It changed the way, for example, I deal with people, deal with my wants or habits. It was hard at the beginning, but the breakthrough happens along the way because God is there to assist us. Kasi siguro another question for us, for our point of reflection is this. What about us? Ano ba yung contra-agere na pwede natin i-exercise in order to be reminded of the race we are into right now? If in the present we are being consoled, we are being commanded by the future. The admonition of the author of the epistle is consistently clear with the image of Christ's marathon. He wrote descriptively that we run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our race. Hence, he is reminding us that the race we find ourselves into is not a sprint o kaya 100-meter dash. Our race is a marathon that requires perseverance, requires endurance. And our eyes should be fixed at the goal. There's no turning back. We should not strive, or rather we should strive and give all our best while trying to remain focused on the finish line. At ano yung finish line? It's no other than Jesus himself. Jesus who defeated death. Jesus, our goal, is also our model. Jesus is our future. And this future is commanding us to stand up and continue our journey. Kanina pili yung kanta, A Warrior is a Child, because it depicts who we are. Warriors wounded by the different battles in our life. Next slide. Think of the pandemic and the havoc it brought to millions of people around the world. Think of those who lost their loved ones, who could not gather together to mourn for their beloved dead. Think of the 1,000 mothers and fathers who lost their jobs and are now ignoring the threats of the virus in the name of food and in the name of survival for themselves and for their children. Kaya nga minsan nakakapagod na, sabi ng kaibigan. And studies reveal that this pandemic disrupted not only our normal routines, but also messed up our physiological, our emotional, our societal, our political, and spiritual lives. But should we give up? Titigil na ba tayo? The answer is no. The future, our goal, who is no other than Christ Himself, demands all our attention, our full attention. Hindi pa tapos yung takbuhan. The race is not yet finished. So we should not lose sight of the finish line. To run the marathon of Christ is another name of discipleship. And discipleship is rooted in commitment. Next slide, please. Gusto ko yung salitang commitment sa Pilipino. Sabi roon, pagtatalaga. It means kasiguraduhan. It is personal conviction. Yung Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1 na sinabi ko tungkol sa what is faith. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for. Mas gusto ko sa kanya sa Filipino. Sabi ron, ang pananampalataya ay ang katiyakan sa mga bagay na inaasahan at ang paninindigan sa mga bagay na di nakikita. Ito rin yung pagtatalaga, paninindigan. Commitment. The personal stand or pagtatalaga is being reminded to us whenever we sing this offertory song titled Prayer for Generosity. Dearest Lord, teach me to be generous. Teach me to serve you as you deserve, to give and not to count the cost. To be a disciple is not to count the cost, in spite of the consequences. Sabi ng isang favorite na writer ko si Father John Paul, sabi niya, it's like going up to Jerusalem. Think about that phrase, going up to Jerusalem. The going up is literal since Jerusalem is built upon a hill and you have to climb to get up to it. Jesus had to set his face to go up to the height of the cross. His going up will end up in a plunge downwards into humiliation and death. The hill of Golgotha was high and barren, and its life's ending was low and shameful. But death does not have the last word. Rather, life has the last word. God has the last word. So to commit myself to Christ and to run his marathon is to go up with him in Jerusalem. And this is quite frightening to many people, kahit sa akin. I remember Bishop Soc Villegas who told me in his homily during my ordination. Sabi niya, Kenneth, people applaud you right now. Pinapalakpan kang ng tao. They will be congratulating you. They will shower you with affections, with gifts. And it is easy to rejoice when people appreciate you. But it is not easy to maintain that joy when people begin to criticize you. When temptations beset you. When enemies crucify you, you will need to die just like your master. But die in peace. Die in joy, for you have served your master well. A few years later, we bumped into each other in Cebu, kung saan ako nakasign dati, and we had a short chat. After asking about my assignment, piniro niya ako. Sabi niya, oh, buhay ka ba sa dami ng ginagawa mo? Humihinga ka pa? And I wanted to reply, Bishop, ang masamang damo matagal mamatay. But I wasn't able to say that. We were just conversing. And I could not forget his parting words to me. Sabi niya sa akin, dalawang bagay. Sabi niya, una, be good. Try to be good. Second, sabi niya sa akin, be happy. Be joyful. Try to be good. Try to be happy. As I reflect on his words, I realize that many people must be afraid of commitment kasi takot silang hindi maging masaya. Para bang yung commitment, ikukulong sila. But commitment based on the love of Christ is something that is free, something that's liberating, something that brings us more. To conclude, finishing well does not only entail looking at the finish line. Three things are being asked of us when we are trying to reflect upon this phrase, to finish well. Finishing well means to allow ourselves to be confronted by our painful and sometimes sinful past. It means to ask difficult and even shameful questions that remind us of our sinfulness. Sins that weigh upon us, sins that impede our movements, but these sins of ours are also occasions of growth and development. Second, finishing well means staring at the saints, the great crowds of witnesses, who are encouraging us to keep on racing. Sige lang, tuloy lang. Bible scholar Frederick Bruce, writing about this crowd of witnesses, once remarked, "It is not so much they who look at us as we who look at them for encouragement." Finishing well means not losing sight of Christ, our goal. It is said that there used to be poster hanging on the door of the sacristy in Mother Teresa's convent. And this poster reminds every priest who comes there para magbisa on the meaning of the Eucharist. Nakalagay doon sa poster na yun, celebrate the Mass as if this is your first Mass, as if this is your only Mass, as if this is your last Mass. I think this applies to all of us as well. We can say, run the marathon of Christ as if this is your first chance, as if this is your only chance, as if this is your last chance. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you for that beautiful recollection, Father Ken. I hope that everyone has found our recollection meaningful this afternoon. We sincerely thank Father Kenneth for enlightening us with his talk. Some key takeaways from his recollection are: we need to accept difficult and shameful things that happen in our lives, in our past. Also, people with faith are extraordinary people who have extraordinary beliefs. And lastly, finishing well is not is can be done by not losing sight on what is our goal. Thank you, Father Kenneth.
Thank you.
We will now transition to our Mass after the several announcements. Our fortnight prayer gathering will not be on the first Saturday of January, but will be on the second Saturday. The first Saturday of January is January 1. Therefore, our prayer gathering will now be on January 8, 2022, Saturday at 4 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. The sharing is to be facilitated by Ms. Marichu Mauro with a small group of attendees who wish to ponder on Scripture while opening their hearts to one another. It's open to all, and we hope you can join us. Secondly, join us on our next light-hearted recollection entitled Quiet Prayer, A Way of Life, on January 15, 2022, Saturday at 4 p.m. The recollection is to be presided by Father Popo Solis, CM. Again, thank you to all. This concludes our lighthearted recollection for this afternoon. Please stand by for our anticipated Mass, which will start in a few moments.